Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Gittin, Daf Yud. We are going to begin on Yud Amud Aleph by the new Mishnah. Says the Masnis, Kol get sheishulav eid kusi, any type of document in which has the signature of a kuti, which we're going to discuss the laws and the machlokas regarding that individual, puzzle. Such a signature is invalid, and Rashi says because we're suspecting that perhaps they could be engaged in Eid Sheker, their testimony may be lies, so therefore we don't want to believe them. Chutz, Gittin Nashim Shechuri Avadim. When it comes to Gittin Nashim, this is another situation where we're lenient for the sake of the woman, as well as freeing a slave, that we are going to allow these people to be able to sign on such a document. And the Gemara, the Mishnah continues as is Master Shavi Lefnei Rabbi Gamliel Likfar Usnai, that the story was presented in this place, and I'm not sure. It's very interesting. Rashi, it just says the name. It says the Divrei Maskell, but there's no Rashi on it. And there was a get isha v'hayu a dove edi kusim b'hichsher. This seems to be a little bit of a contradiction because our Mishnah says only one kusi, and here clearly it says that you could have two witnesses or more than one witness who is a kusi, and yet it would still be good. Of course, the Gemara is going to discuss this. Says the Gemara. So Mani Masnisa, who is this Mishnah like? Lo Tanakama v'lo Rabbi Eliezer v'lo Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So there's a three-way machlokas how we view a kusi. And we do this regarding studying the laws of matzah, the sanya. Matzah's kusi, muteres. V'adam yotzei b'nei chavaso b'pesach. A person is able to use the matzah of a kusi, says Rashi, on Pesach l'achila. V'chashin shema hechmitzo. We're not concerned that maybe it's chametz. And you could even use it to fulfill your obligation on the first night, because as Rashi says, there's a special obligation, be'erev tochel matzos, that you're supposed to eat it. And therefore, because of that, it's supposed to be done. It has to have a shimur l'shem choyves matzah. Nonetheless, Ksuvim says. Nonetheless, Rashi says ukusim b'kinhein. They're experts. Chesricha l'shtamer l'shma the oisin l'shimur. We say, at least according to this opinion, that kutim are experts in these laws. They will make sure that the matzah was properly watched during the process of making it, and therefore, because of that, you could actually use it even on the night of Pesach. Rabbi Eliezer oiser lefi she'ein bekin b'dukdukim mitzvos. No, he says the opposite. You cannot. You can't even eat it any time, any of the days of Pesach, because we're concerned actually it's chametz. Forget about the first night of Pesach at the Seder, when there's a special mitzvah to rice to eat matzah. Anytime, we're just concerned that maybe chametz completely, because they don't know what they're talking about. So it's almost like the opposite extreme. Now, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, he says an interesting point. He says, Kol mitzvah shechziku b'kusim, any mitzvah in which they embrace, harbi medatakin ba yosim Yisrael. They're even more strict than the way that we adhere to the mitzvahs. So what does that come to say? So it's brought down in the first paragraph of Masechtas Chulin, B'chol Sheichtin Mefarish, Yasser Shimon Lasufe, Tanakama. He's coming just to add on to this original opinion of the Tanakama, Av Mitzvah Shehi Mediri Sefer. Even something which is, let's say, rabbinic. Ve'enu Ksu B'Torah, even though it's not in the Torah, Im Hechazika Ba Samchin Alayu. If they adhere to it, we rely on them. So that's the three-way machlokas. Now we have to understand which one fits, if any, into our Mishnah Mani. Who's the one? Tanakama. Now the Tanakama say that we basically trust this guy like he's a regular Yid. So afilu shar shtaris nami. We should not just allow his signature when it comes to Gittin Nashim, Shchori Avadim. It should be all times. It's because he's like a regular person. Maybe the question could have also been asked, according to the Masa, we see maybe you can even use two Eidim, right? Rabbi Eliezer, or not. Forget. The Reisha says you can only use one witness, so maybe you could even have said maybe you can use 2 witnesses. But nonetheless, it certainly doesn't seem like the sheet of the Tanakama, because the Tanakama hold that they're like full-fledged Jews. We completely trust them. So we completely trust them. So then why are we being so strict on how they sign documents? So Rabbi Elazar, we shouldn't allow, even when it comes to get Isha, because he basically says that they're not experts in anything. They don't do anything. We can't even trust that their matzah is not chametz. So we shouldn't trust them for even signing Gittin Noshim. And then so it depends. If they're actually careful when it comes to signatures, I feel shtaros nami, then we should believe them for that. If they're not trustworthy and or they don't embrace these laws, I feel gedi shenamilo. So either they adhere to it or they don't. He maybe considers Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Maybe they just split it when it comes to different documents. Says Rashi, when it comes to Gittin and Shechrurim, for some reason that they're strict, and they're going to be very careful to make sure everything is done properly. But when it comes to other documents, they're not going to be so strict. So maybe that's the reason why we make this distinction in our Mishnah. So we said before, why 1 witness? I feel a treinami. So again, this is what the Gemara, which I alluded to, that if in fact we say that one witness is acceptable, which seems to be the exclusion if both of them are kutim, why? So why only 1? If in fact they embrace these mitzvos, so then these laws of shechur avadim and Gittin Noshim, then we should say even both witnesses could be kutim. So Olam Rabbi Elazar. So really, going back to the case of matzah, really it's like Rabbi Elazar. Now this is unbelievable, because Rabbi Elazar says, seemingly the one which doesn't fit at all, Rabbi Elazar says that they are not able to give you matzah. That matzah is probably chametz, or could be chametz. We certainly can suspect it to be, because they're not particular and experts in laws and all the nuance. Ein bekin b'dukdukim mitzvos. So how could our Mishnah be like him if we don't trust them? Ukagon, why do we trust them over here by Gittin Noshim? The Chasim Yisrael B'sof. There's 2 signatures, and the Yisrael signed directly underneath the Kuti signature. So there's only 1 signature, the Kuti, and right below it is the Yisrael's signature that he signed on the bottom. Says Rashi, Kagon the Chasim Yisrael Eid Hasheni, the second witness, Tachas Kuti, underneath the signature of the Kuti. So how does that help? What does that matter? So as we continue to Yudam and Beis, De'il Lav the Kuti Chaver Havi. Now this Kuti could have been an exception. A typical Kuti, if we don't know any better, don't eat their matzah. However, the fact that you have Yisrael that's signed underneath the Kuti signature must be some type of proof that this person, this Kuti, in fact, is knowledgeable, is a baki in Dikduki mitzvos. Why? Because the ilav de Kuti chaver havi lo machtem leik mikamei. The Yisrael wouldn't otherwise have signed it. If he knew that this Kuti was just a regular Kuti, he wouldn't have signed underneath it. He was obviously aware that who this person was, and he recognized that this is an exceptional Kuti, and therefore, because of that, we say that it's a valid get. So anytime there's 2 signatures, and if the Kuti is on the first, and then the Yisrael is on the second line, so we should always just simply accept it. So why do we make a distinction between Gittin Noshim and Sharshtaros? El Amrinan Rav Chashavak. It must be, maybe, when it comes to Sharshtaros, that he left space, Laman de Kashish Mine, someone who is older or someone who's greater than him. So Hachinami Rav Chashavak Laman de Kashish Mine, maybe the same thing. Maybe the Kuti signed it, but really there was space on the top, which means maybe the Yisrael signed it first. The Yisrael thought that someone, Adam Chashid, was going to come and sign tomorrow, whatever, when I'm not around, and he'll sign on the top above it. And Kuti ended up doing. So when it comes to Shar Shtaros, we don't allow it because this is a possibility that maybe it's not proof that this is a Kuti Chaver. So maybe it's the same issue when it comes to a get. Maybe the Yisrael signed on the bottom, left some space, and a Kuti wrote on the top. Says Rashi, Amrinan Ha Yisrael Rav Chashava Kolman Dekashish Minei Shiroes Eidosim Yisrael Zeh Hachatum Yisraelim Zakenim Imenu. So the Yisrael didn't think a Kuti would be the one signing above. He thought it was going to be a Zakin Choshev. He saw all these great rabbis around. All of a sudden, some Kuti ends up signing it. He didn't expect that to happen, but maybe the fact that a Kuti's signature is above his is not proof of anything. So this has to be a proof. The fact that we do believe Gittin Nashim, maybe he left space and he didn't know it was a Kuti. No, it always has to be that when it comes to Gittin Nashim, both Adim have to sign in the presence of one another. And therefore, if in fact the Yisrael signed it, it must be that he knew that the Kuti Chaver was going to be there, and he saw him signing it. And the fact is that the Kuti Chaver must have signed it first, and then the Yisrael. It's not that he said, I'm just going to leave some space. Now, by Shar Shtaros, he would do that and say, well, I'm leaving, and someone else will sign it. That's okay. And therefore, because that's okay, now we're not going to necessarily trust the signature of the Kuti, because it's not Eidos that the Yisrael signed underneath, proving that he was actually a Kuti Chaver. When it comes to Gittin, however, Gittin Nashim, it has to be that both of them are together. So, in fact, it is like a form of testimony. Now, why? Why, when it comes to Gittin, do we make this rule that they have to be signing together? My time, because there's a gezerah of kulchem. What's kulchem? Says Rashi. So we'll see in a later parak in Daf Samach Vav. Amr Lasor, if a person says to 10 people, kulchem kisvu get lishti, I want all of you to write a get for my wife. Now, what does that mean? Everyone writes one line. So in this, what it really means, as Rashi explains, what he really means is one person should write the get, but then all of those 10 people will sign it. Now, if let's say only 5 of the 10 people actually sign it, that's actually a puzzle get. Why? The fact that he specified this, the husband did, it must be proof that that's exactly how he wanted the get to be created, written, and signed in this way. And therefore, in the event that he did make the statement and not everyone signed it, it's not a valid get. Even though, let's say there was 2 signatures, so everyone would look at it and say, oh, it looks like a good get. But the truth is, it wasn't, because he said kulchem, and 10 of them had to sign. Therefore, tiknu afilu heicha delo amar kulchem shahayu kol edim nikbatsim b'shas hachasima. So here's the problem. Again, we want them all together in order to alleviate this potential issue of this confusion that it looks, maybe it's a good get, it's really not a good get. So all 10 of those people have to be together and sign it together so that it's completely taken care of. We know that it's a valid get because all of those people that the husband said should sign it will be there in the same time, and they'll all sign it, and therefore be a good get. Now, because of this seemingly small chance of kulchem, we make this rule for all things. It's like a low plug. We don't make any distinctions. And therefore, the law is the same. That when it comes to any time a get is written, both Adam need to be present. Question 8. Maishna shtare kedushin mishtare gittin latana demasnis and the machshir aid kusi bezeh upassal bezeh. It's interesting. He said aid kedushin. Could be shar shtaros. This is how he writes it. The beget kaimelon the aid get chaysin zeh below zeh. They have to be signing together. V'il ulav the kusi chaverhu. If he wasn't knowledgeable, lo havi Yisrael machtim le mekamei. Then the Yisrael would never have signed underneath him. Masha'in kin b'kedushin or any other document. Chais min zeh below zeh. You could sign it even not in each other's presence. Okay. Getting back to what we said before. Rabbi Lezer, lo hechshiru boy el eid echad kusi bilvad. As we said, we only allow one kuti. You can't have both signatures being a kuti, because then the whole point of what we're saying doesn't make any sense. The only reason why we listen to an eid kusi is because he's really not reliable, but it's the Yisrael who's actually giving edus that he actually is a reliable person, this one person. That's why he's signed underneath, which is why you can only have one aid. My kamashmon tanina kol get sheshul of aid kusi pasalchul. Obviously, we see it. You can only have only one witness. It says it already in the Mishnah. What's he adding? So maybe you would think even two kuti would still be kosher when it comes to Gittin. So why does it mention one? The chiddush is that when it comes to shtaros, even one is not enough. Maybe it's just emphasizing the point that you can't even use one kusi for shtaros. But maybe when it comes to Gittin Nashim, for some reason, you can have both. Utrelo. One second, you're telling me you can't have two? Valkatani, but we learned. Usnoi, the Mishnah said that there's a story of Get Isha, and listen to the language of the Mishnah. A dove, a deich kutim, the hiksher. It says that they were witnesses. So the question is, it's not one. It's written Lashon Rabbi. Sounds like even if both of them are Edi Kuti, it still works. Some are by, Tani Edo. Just change the language of our Mishnah a little bit to say that the witness, because you can only have one witness. You can't have two. Rabbi Omer, no, Leom Trey. Really, maybe it is two. How's that possible? Rabbi Gamliel, Miflig Polig. Rabbi Gamliel is just disagreeing. Rabbi Gamliel Machshir B'shnayim. He actually will allow two. Umasanami, this is the story. Shevilif Rabbi Gamliel Kvar Nosnoi Get Isha Vayu a dove Edi Kusim V'Hiksher. TA8. Get Isha She Chais Min Alav Shnei Edim Kutim Madinoi. So according to one Mandiarmers, it's kosher. According to the other, it's puzzle. And according to another, it's totally ichsuk olo ichsuk. So again, you can just borrow the concept of matzah, that if he's reliable when it comes to matzah completely, so he's reliable when it comes to shtaros completely, and therefore you can even have two edim. So again, it's basically a three-way machlokus whether we rely on the signatures of a kuti or not. Let's see the next mission. At least we're only going to get to the two dots today. Says the Masnis. Kol shtaros ha'olim bi'ar ka'ois shel avdi chalavim, which we had already. When it comes to all documents which are produced by a non-Jewish court system, they're acceptable. Even if the signatures were by these Avdi Chavim, they're not Jewish people that signed any of these documents, it's still valid. These are valid documents. When it comes to Gittin Nashim, it has to be in a Jewish court, and it has to be by Jewish signatures. So too when it comes to Shkori Badim. So that's another way that, as we said, they're the same. Interestingly enough, even when it comes to Gittin, we also say that they'll be kosher in these courts. Lo huskru el bizman shenasu behedjit. What does that mean? It says Rashi, we only mentioned, but based in live soil, in the base medrash, that the apostle el bizman shenasu behedjit ali de avchavim hedyotos shenin dayanim, that if they're not experts, they're not real judges, that's the problem. But if you go to a real judicial system, a real court, apparently according to this opinion, we'll have to understand this better, that you could even have a divorce document which will be halachically valid as a get in that situation as well, just as long as they're experts. Obviously we have to understand this better, which we're going to dive into more and delve into it in tomorrow's daf. But kapasik v'tni, the truth is, our Mishnah just mentioned that all shtaros, it doesn't matter what type of document, it's all the same, which means lo shna mechel, lo shna matana. It doesn't matter if we're talking about a bill of sale, some type of document you're selling something, or if it's a gift that you're not giving away any money, then both of those situations we completely rely on these our ka'is of the chachamim. Now, mecher, bishlam mecher, I can understand that when we're dealing, let's say, someone who's selling a piece of property, that the reality is, as Rashi says, it's not the shtar that is really causing you to be kainit. You have to actually pay for it, right? You have to pay. You have to actually transfer money to the seller, and that's really what happens. So mechi yoiv zuzi kamayhu. So when you actually physically are giving money from the buyer to the seller in front of the court, hu dekana. So that's how he's kainit. Ushtar rai ba'almahu. It's really, the shtar that they wrote really means nothing anyway. It's just some type of bill of sale. It's a proof that it was sold. But the reality is, the person is kona, really acquires it by buying something. So just like you go to a store and you buy a candy bar, so you buy that candy bar with money, and they give you a receipt, which proves that you bought it. So that it's really, even if you could say, I don't want the receipt, because that's not what is the kinyan. The kinyan is through the money. So I can understand their documents when it comes to a shtar mecher, why we say in that situation that it's fine, because the shtar really doesn't have so much weight anyway as far as a kinyan. Dulo yoiv zuzi kamaya, because let's say you didn't give any money, lo havi mari nafshaihu. It would not. Let's look in Rashi what that means. They wouldn't cause problems for themselves. The kaisel shtar. They're not going to end up writing a shtar basically and looking bad. The shtar is basically some type of receipt or proof that they witnessed that you gave them money. But if they did not see any transferring of money from hands from the buyer to the seller, they're not going to write this shtar. So the reality is, even the courts understand that the whole transaction is really the money. So I can understand why we would listen there. El matana, I understand, by a gift, there's no money that's being handed over. It's only the document. So b'mai kakani, how is this person being kind of the gift? La b'hai shtara, it's only with this document. B'hai shtara chasam b'yalmu. This is not a valid shtar, because again, it wasn't done in the Jewish court, it wasn't done with Jewish signatures. So why would we say when it comes to a shtar matana it would work? So on this we have two answers. Amar Shmuel, dina de malchusa dina. As we're familiar, that because this is the law in the courts of Kachavim, that they do this for all other people, so therefore we say, okay, fine, Dina Malchusa Dina will also accept this as well. We're going to recognize that they have this authority, even when it comes to a shtar matana, and therefore, in fact, it will work. The Iboy Sema Tani Chutz Mikigite Nashim. It's not only excluding Gittin Nashim, but also add the prefix like Gittin Nashim. What does that mean? So Rashi says, Kol shtar shein kigittin nashim. All documents like our Gittin Nashim, what's that? Sha'alidei hashtar hadavar nigmar, dahainu nami shtar matana. So it's actually excluding it. Anything which is like Gittin Nashim, because Gittin Nashim, there's no giving over money. The man doesn't give money. There's no mention of money at all. The kinyan is through the shtar completely. So therefore, certainly it won't work when it comes to a non-Jewish court. We'll have to understand this other opinion or Mishnah tomorrow. But therefore, we'll also say it's the same thing when it comes to a shtar matana, that you're right. It actually will not be valid. I think we have one more question here. Question TB10, which I think we may have done already. Rav Shimon de Mashra feel Gittin Nashim. Let's look at number 9. Okay, 9 actually we did already. Rav Shimon de Mashra feel Gittin Nashim ba'arko shel Kachavim u'krabelezer. Okay, that's going to be tomorrow's daf. Adkan.